Hey everyone, I'm Zenith Priest, and welcome to my introduction for Ocean's Hungry Grasp, where I will give you insight into the nature of this spirit and show you how to drive off the invaders by turn 5. Our summary of powers shows a high complexity spirit with a touch more offense than the other traits, and the playstyle hints at what to expect when playing this spirit, predicting a clear coast and tough times inland. It also suggests we make use of an alternate form of energy gain. Our setup is unique in two ways. First, we start with a presence in the ocean, and second, it's the first spirit we've seen that gives us a choice on where to place a starting presence. I'll go over this option later on once we get into the demo game. With our special rules, Ocean in Play lets us place or move our presence into the ocean, but denies access to inland lands. We can also target the ocean as a coastal wetland for purposes of powers and blight, as long as we maintain presence on that board. This limitation forces us to rely on power gains, fear effects, or ally spirits in order to affect the heart of the island. In trade, we get to drown invaders and Dahan that are moved into the ocean. Drowning gives us that alternate means of energy gain we saw earlier, either by moving invaders into the ocean directly, or by powers that drown. Note that Dahan can also be drowned, but you won't gain any benefit for doing so. Our growth represents the ebb and flow of the tides, and our influence on the island fluctuates in tandem. The first option is to reclaim, which also grants a new power and 2 energy. The trade-off is that we must gather a presence into each ocean, limiting our reach and power potential. Generally, repeated reclaims won't be that tempting for this spirit. The next option lets us place 2 presents into any ocean and gain an energy. This is good early game to open up your initial build, and once you're happy with your powers, you can finish the track or dip into the other one. This is also the only way to get presence onto ally boards. The last option grants a power, places a presence in the coast, and pushes a presence from each ocean. This gives us flexibility to spread out across multiple coasts or establish a relevant sacred site. Our energy track is restrictive in giving energy, instead granting elements. Because we can drown for energy, this isn't much of a drawback and gives us elements to help with certain thresholds, including our innate powers. The lower track reveals progressively more card plays once you get past the initial hurdle. This is the track we'll be taking for the demo game, as it gives us more direct options to choose from. Ocean has 2 innate powers. Pound ships to splinters grants fear, up to 4 at the last threshold. As a solo player in particular, fear cards offer a valuable way to stop builds and mitigate ravages. Ocean Breaks the Shore allows us to control the coast, gaining fear and energy by drowning buildings. Drowning is our primary source of energy, so it's really important to consider if we can afford a build. For our unique powers, Call of the Deeps lets us gather an explorer into one of our coastal lands, and again if that land is the ocean. Pulling 2 explorers into the ocean is a good source of energy, but sometimes it's better to stop a build inland. Grasping Tide grants fear and defense in a coastal land. It's good early to provide defense when your energy is low and you haven't established a lot of presence, or later should your coast start to get out of hand. If you have the space and nothing else useful to play, this card also pushes the fear count that much higher. Swallow the Land Dwellers drowns an explorer, town, and Dahan in one of your coastal lands. If you want to keep your Dahan, be wary, but sometimes keeping your coast safe and gaining that extra energy is worth the sacrifice. Finally, Tidal Boon grants energy to an ally spirit and lets them push a town and a couple Dahan from one of their lands, with Dahan pushed into the ocean, able to relocate to any coastal land. This should free up some resources for them to help you with your inland lands. In solo play, it ensures a clear coast while ramping up your energy. Note that all of your powers except Tidal Boon must target the coast, which means that even if you gain additional range through some effect, you still won't be able to affect the lands most inland. And with that, let's get into the demo game. To keep our decision simplified, and to highlight the elements of this build, I'll just be running the base game without any expansions. First, let's go over the decision of where to place our coastal presence. It won't be relevant in the build I'm highlighting, but if you're looking to try out other growth options turn 1, then this will be a good primer. For me, I prefer to go where I have the best access to stopping builds with a turn 1 Call of the Deeps. For the A, B, and C boards, this is land 1, though the reasoning differs slightly. With the D board, it's land 2, to catch either the Blighted Mountain or the Inland Sands. Alright, we begin by placing our presence. Turn 1. The invaders have explored into the sands. Ideally, we'll want to be able to prevent the inland build, defend our coast, and drown the remaining city next turn. It's an ambitious ask and only possible if the minor powers allow. Because of this, I like starting with the last option to see what those are right away, giving me a better idea of what to expect. The trade-off is that I don't gain an energy this turn. When looking for this first power, we have a number of options. Earth and Water lets us play Call of the Deeps and Swallow the Land Dwellers, and still have enough elements to drown the city next turn. A zero-cost power with Water means we can play it plus our 2 Earth cards next turn to drown the city. But we may not be able to protect our sands, so we need to place both presents there. Another good option is a zero-cost power that gives us energy. This can be directly, or through an effect that moves an invader into the ocean. If none of these show up, then look for any move abilities that will help you reach inland, or your elements, preferably with air to keep pounding ships to splinters. In this set, Call to Isolation costs 0, and lets us push non-city invaders from a land with Dahan. This would stop the inland sands from building, so we'll keep it in mind. Call to Bloodshed meets none of our criteria, so we'll pass. Sap the Strength of Multitudes costs 0, has water, and will let us adequately defend our sands. Call to 10 has water but costs 1. It does have some potential value, possibly taking out a further town inland by pushing the Dahan there, but doesn't feel our opening needs. So we resist the calls and pick Sap the Strength of Multitudes. Next, we'll open up 2 card plays and place a presence in our sands. Because our new power doesn't require a sacred site, we can move our ocean presence wherever, with maybe a slight preference for land 3. Even with 2 plays, we only use Call of the Deeps because the other cards are necessary next turn. After we gather the Inland Explorer into our jungle, just the coastal sands build, and then the invaders wander into the jungles. Turn 2. We want to gain as much energy as possible to gain and use a major power next turn, hopefully one that allows access further inland. Because we need 3 cards to drown the city, let's pick the second growth option to put enough presence down. We can place them in any ocean, so if you have allies, now is a good opportunity to establish presence on their boards to make use of oceans in play. Our plays this turn needs to be our 2 earth powers, and Sap the Strength comes in to provide the last water and defend the sands. With no counterattacks, the invaders continue their turn, building in the jungles, before exploring further into the mountains. On the slow phase, let's swallow the land dwellers and break the shore in the sands, drowning everything. Then use Tidal Boon to push our jungle town. We have the option to push the Dahan as well, but it's better to clear the land by defending it. Turn 3. With enough energy, we want to gain a major power, and with 3 card plays, Reclaiming is better, giving us a bit more energy and the potential to hit a threshold on our new power. Our primary focus here is a way to handle the innermost lands. Blazing Renewal would let us reach if we had destroyed presence and could place presence inland, so not that one. Power Storm has its place, especially if we had picked a Gather or Push power turn 1. Accelerated Rot does give us reach, but only targets jungles or wetlands. It's too slow to protect land 4 this turn, but we could clean up and hope for better options next turn to clear the mountain. Cleansing Rot is typically a really good pick for Ocean. Good damage, cleans up Blight, and a feasible threshold for a lot more damage. Unfortunately on this board, it only helps on the coasts, which is not what we have trouble with. Accelerated Rot is our best pick, so we grab that one. We'll forget Sap the Strength because it served its purpose. We could keep it to defend the jungles, but consider that Accelerated Rot will clear the jungles anyway, and the island is still healthy. We only need 2 cards for our current situation, which opens up a possible 4 card plays next turn. Those cards are Call of the Deeps and Accelerated Rot. You could pull in the other Explorer here, and I thought about this myself. But we want the mountain to build, and the fear card we've earned could force us to remove the explorer there. By leaving the lone explorer in the jungle, there are enough similarities in the two lands, they're the only invader, they both have Dahan, they're both in the coasts, that we allow the option to remove it instead. After pounding ships to splinters, we see that Isolation is one such card. So we remove the Jungle Explorer and onto the Ravage, where just land 4 Blights. The invaders proceed to build in the mountains before exploring into the coasts. On the slow phase, we clear out the inland jungle as planned and carry on. Turn 4. Our remaining hand can deal with the coastal threat, leaving us with just the upper mountains to resolve. Choosing the last growth option, we get another chance to find what we're looking for. Terrifying Nightmares is generally a solid pick for Ocean. It has reach, generates fear, pushes invaders one step closer to being drowned, and has an unattainable threshold for a much higher fear count. Rapid Wings of Sunlight can fill situational positions quite well for us. It allows a counterattack into further lands as long as we can keep Dahan in our coasts. The Trees and Stones Speak of War is similar to Rapid Wings of Sunlight, but without the threshold, we're not going to be able to reach the higher lands. Winds of Rust and Atrophy downgrades a building and provides defense up to 3 away from a sacred site. This can be really useful in taking down the last couple of buildings, either directly with its effect or with a counterattack if Dahan are present. So we have a few good choices here, but I'm going to pass on Rapid Wings of Sunlight because we need to pull Dahan from the coastal mountain, which we need cleared to keep the coast from building. If there was enough Dahan to clear the upper mountains, then yeah, this would definitely be the pick. And as much as I really want to grab Terrifying Nightmares, it doesn't let us deal with that city. Winds of Rust and Atrophy will, so that's the one I'm going with. We'll need to forget a discarded card, and because Call of the Deeps will help with the next Explore, let's keep that one and forget Accelerated Rot, which can't target what we need. Our presence continues to come off the bottom, and then we play our hand. Grasping Tide defends our mountain, and the Winds will defend inland, reducing the city there. Pounding more ships to splinters will trigger Terror Level 2 and give us a second fear card to resolve. Seek Safety would help if we had an Explorer we couldn't handle. And Emigration Accelerates can help clear the coast, but we want everything as is, so let's pick off one of the mountain explorers before we proceed. Coastal mountains are cleared, and the upper one is defended. And now they build in the coasts and continue exploring into the sands. In the slow phase, we drown what we can, swallowing the land dwellers in the sands and using Tidal Boon to drown our jungle town. Don't push the Dahan into the sands, so we can drown that town when it builds. Turn 5. With no cards in hand, we reclaim, looking for a solution to the mountain towns. Talons of Lightning would be perfect if we could reach. Mists of Oblivion does have the range, and will take care of the buildings as long as we can reach the threshold. Infinite Vitality is a good defensive card, but will not help us clear the buildings. Paralyzing Fright generates 4 fear and stops all actions in target land, generating another 4 fear if we reach the threshold. We can hit the threshold for both Mists and Fright, and either will end the game, but Paralyzing Fright is fast, so that should be the pick. Unfortunately, I was too focused on getting rid of the towns that I failed to notice Terror Level 3 was possible. So here, I'll just let play continue towards victory with Mists of Oblivion, while sharing some final thoughts on Ocean's Hungry Grasp. As you can see, considering power options and choosing appropriately is crucial to playing this spirit well, not just in terms of what thresholds you can reach, but in the interaction between powers and what they can provide. Personally, playing Ocean taught me more about a power's potential value than any of the other spirits. Understanding what's possible with the Fear deck is also useful, and not just for what helps. I've shown there are situations that could foil your plans, and being able to plan accordingly can make the difference, especially with solo play. Sometimes, though, you're just not going to find the powers necessary to deal with the lands further inland, and the Fear cards will be out of sync with your needs. If playing with allies, this will be less of a concern, but for solo play, some longer games, or maybe straight losses, will be due to this type of luck. Keep your presence in mind when making decisions. Your growth options regularly move your presence around, which is useful for being able to adapt to the board, but it can also throw off your plans if you're not careful. Alright everyone, that's all I have this time. Hope you gained some insight, and good luck in your next games.